All right, let's get started. Welcome everybody to this week's Tech Lunch. My name is Sami Suo-Heikki, and today the topic will be creating a progressive web app with Angular 2. Now, I already gave a Tech Lunch presentation about Angular 2 a few months ago, so I won't go too much into details what Angular is and how to get started with it. But instead, we'll do just a small recap about Angular, then look at what progressive web apps are, and then actually to the point of this Tech Lunch, how to create a progressive web app with Angular 2. Okay, so a small recap first about Angular. It's a JavaScript framework for building web applications, and it's built from the ground up by using TypeScript. And also when you are creating your applications, you can create the applications with using TypeScript or JavaScript or even Dart. Today there is no stable release of Angular 2 yet, and the most recent one is RC5. Now if you want to check out more about Angular, please check out their website, angular.io, or my previous presentation about Angular. Yeah, what has happened since my last presentation? Back then, the most recent version was RC1, and now it's RC5. And the most frustrating thing about that is that there has been breaking changes on every RC. So if you created your app with, let's say, with RC3, it probably won't work with RC5. And also they have redid their way of starting an Angular application. They have presented this new thing called ng modules, and I can give you a presentation, how big of changes they have in Angular. So here's a picture of how to start your application in Angular. This is from the RC4 and the previous ones. So the first thing that you do is import the Bootstrap component from the Angular library, and then import the actual component that you want to start your application with. With the RC5, it looks something like this. So you first need to import the ng module, and then the actual component that you will use. And then you won't use the Bootstrap function, but instead ng module, and then set up the Bootstrap in there. And this is just like one example of how much Angular 2 has changed in between a couple of one RC actually. But that was actually everything that I have to say now about Angular. Let's go into the progressive web apps. Now, if there's someone who doesn't know yet what progressive web apps are, they are this new generation of applications, of web applications, that can be seen as a hybrid between mobile applications and web applications. So they bring out the best features that native apps have, and also the best features that web applications have. They should also work offline. So when the user doesn't have any internet connection or has a bad internet connection, the user experience still should be pretty good. And also with the progressive web apps, we can use push notifications, so we can interact with our user in the same way as we do with native apps. Also, progressive web apps should be installable, meaning that the user can install it to their home screen or their desktop on their computer. But all in all, progressive web apps, they're web applications, but they feel like a native app. And if you want to know more about progressive web apps, please check out tomorrow's CF event. It's all about that. As you know, Google has created Angular, and Google is a big promoter on progressive web apps at the moment. So if you are using Polymer, there's the Polymer app toolbox that you can use to create progressive web apps. There's also libraries for easily to create service workers, SV Precatch and SV Toolbox. And also with the Angular, there is the Angular Mobile Toolkit, which I will go soon into more details. But first, a couple of words about technologies and patterns that we are using in progressive web apps. The most important thing is the service workers. And the service worker is this external JavaScript file that is working alongside with your own application's JavaScript. But that purpose is to bring the offline functionality and push notifications to your website. So they can handle all the HTTP requests and see if the user is offline. And if the user is offline, we can use some precached site for the user. And the second part is App Shell. And App Shell is not any new technology. It's just a design pattern. And with it, you should create a shell for your app. And the shell will consist of things like toolbar and navigation. And then the actual content will be lazy loaded afterwards. With it, we can give the user a quick sight of our app so that there won't be the white screen for several seconds. Third part is the app manifest, and that is just a simple JSON file that you can use to configure how your application behaves like a native app. So you can set up some names, icons, and when the user starts from the home screen, what kind of loading page are we showing, and stuff like that. Pretty easy to work with. And the fourth and fifth part are pretty clear. Fourth is to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to create a responsive design. And then the fifth part is the transport layer security, which means that your application should be hosted in an HTTPS domain, so it will be secure. But then to the actual content, today's presentation, how to create a progressive web app by using Angular. Now, when I was searching through these issues, I found out that Angular has this mobile toolkit that you can find in mobile.angular.io. And they say it's a series of tools and guides for you to easily create a progressive web app by using Angular. But it's still in alpha, and what I found is that it only consists of a couple of guides on how to get started. But instead, there was another tool that we could use, the Angular CLI, command line interface tool for Angular projects. And with it, we can initialize new applications with it. And there's an extra parameter, as you can see, the -- mobile. And if we give the -- mobile parameter, the application will be initialized as a progressive web app. So what it actually does, it will generate the Hello World progressive web app. So there's no app shell yet, but all the components and stuff like that are ready for you to use. When you are building the application, it will automatically generate the service workers for you, so you don't have to create them manually. It will also create the app manifest, the JSON file, automatically, so you don't have to create it yourself. And then at the last thing that it will do, it will fail. I can show actually how it's working on my computer right now. So this is an application that I've initialized by using the Angular CLI with the mobile parameter. And this is all the stuff that it will install. And in the source folder will be our actual application. But if you look at the package.json, can you see it? Yes. you probably see that it's installing Angular with the RC1 version. So the current version was RC5, so this is way out of date. And there's a lot of dependencies, a lot of development dependencies that it will install automatically. But if you look at the actual application, here is the index.html file. And you can see here that it automatically generates and imports the manifest web app file, which looks like this. So as I mentioned, there's name, short name, some icons, and some colors. And this was to configure how your application behaves like a native app. So it's already there. Also, if our environment is production, it will automatically register the service workers for us, so we don't have to do it manually in any way. But what the actual application looks like, this is just a simple Angular component. So we initially import the component from the Angular library and then create a new component and set it up with the selector and a template. So this will just show one heading with the title of TechLunch PWA works. But something extra, as mentioned with the app shell, it will import the app shell directives and add it to your component. So you will have app shell directives already in your disposal, and that brings some helper DOM elements that you can use to actually create the shell for your app. But if we now check it out what it actually looks like when we try to start it. So we can use the Angular CLI's ngserve method. Serving on localhost. Let's check it out what it looks like. Wait for it. Yes, a build error. So when I haven't modified this application at all. I only initialized it with the Angular CLI, and building it the first time it will give a build error. And the build error is because of some of the directives, the app shell directives actually. And when I got this, I spent like numerous hours trying to work with the dependencies and to get it work. I actually have some success on my Mac. I got the first build to work, but then when I added one material component, then the same build error happened again. So the user experience in this case was pretty bad. And what I found online is that many people had the same issue as I did. And then when I was watching the Angular CLI's GitHub repo, I noticed that they will even remove the mobile support on their next version, at least temporarily. So that was a bummer. Then I started to think of some alternative solutions. And that would have to consist of Angular 2, because I wanted to create it with that. I had to create the service workers, app manifest, and the app shell design in there. And then what I started to do is I wanted to get started with Angular 2 without the CLI. So I would just download their quick start codes and work from there. I thought that I could create the app manifest manually because it's just a simple JSON file. And then to create the app shell design, I could lazy load the actual content. But then with the service workers, I really didn't have any idea where to start. But I found the Chrome team's service worker toolbox, which enables you to create service workers pretty easy. And then for the UI components, I started to work with the Angular's Material 2 components. So this is where I start with, from the 5-minute quick start. And I can show what I did in here. So here is the index.html. I can import the web application manifest in the same way, and that is pretty easy to do. Just find from online that what kind of parameters it gets and work and create it from there. That was easy. And then for the service workers, I used Service Worker Toolbox from Google, and that is imported in here. And with it, I have to give one extra attribute, the service worker, and with it, my configuration file, where I will set up what my service worker would do. But then the actual application, that will look pretty much the same as with as a project made by Angular CLI. So the first things that I did is I imported the material design components to my Angular 2 component, so I can start using the material design component. And then here I will just initialize a new component with a template and some styles, and add directives, the material design components as directives. So if we look at the actual HTML file now, you can see that I'm using these custom elements. They're not really custom elements like web components, but they're Angular's custom elements. So there's some side navigation, toolbar, buttons, and stuff like that. And I can actually show what it looks like right now. Yes, I have here a new application that just has a toolbar, some paper card with some buttons, no ripple effect yet, and also a navigation. So this is pretty much easy to work with. And then from the Chrome development tools, I can check out that is my manifest and are my service workers working. So if we first look at the app manifest, hopefully you will see it. There's the name for it, there's the short name for it, and start URL, and all the cool icons that I draw myself. I should be a designer. Yeah, but there's also a button, add to home screen, and from Chrome I can actually add this application to my desktop. So the app manifest, that's working fine. The next up is the service workers. I can find the details from here also. So status of it looks like it's activated and running. There seems to be some errors, but hopefully that won't mind. And I can now actually show you the configuration file that I used to create the service workers. So here's one example. I've added event listener to it, and it will listen to the service workers push event. And when push comes, I will just show some notifications that a title and some info in here. And with the Chrome development tools, I can actually emulate the push event. So I'm clicking push, and yay, well, it's hiding there, but I have a notification in here that says title and some info.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This push notification you did, this is something that happens sort of on the local machine, but I thought the idea of service workers was that it's sort of a place where you can call backend service.
Yes, yeah, this is just like a presentation. kind of cases, but that is the real use case for it. And then for the offline support, I can use the Service Worker toolbox to pre-catch my files, and I don't need actually anything more. After that, the offline support should work. And now Google has this nice tool called the Lighthouse. And with the Lighthouse, I can generate a report that how progressive my application is. So it will test different things like the service workers and app manifest, and then I will get a detailed instructions that is my app a progressive web app or not. And this will take about 10 to 15 seconds, so not much. Okay, report is ready. 73 out of 100. It's, pretty okay. Probably it's not loading as fast as because we are using all the Angular and we are not using production mode at the moment. But in here we can look for additional details. So as you can see that we have a registered service worker and the application works offline. And in here we have scored poorly on the speed. And we are not, of course, using HTTPS right now because we are on localhost. User can be prompted to add the home screen. Yes, for everything. So the app manifest at least is working properly. And some other stuff. Also best practices. Almost everything is right for me. But for the performance, there is still work to be done. But it's pretty okay, considering that I had to create pretty much everything manually. But if we generate a similar report out of an application that I've created with Polymer, and with Polymer I can actually just use a Polymer CLI to use the init, and then all the service workers and stuff like that will already work. But on the Angular app I had the score of 73 out of 100. And with Polymer application, I get 88 out of 100 with much less work. So just a small details about the pros and cons. Should you do it or should you not do a progressive web app with Angular? One of the pros was the boilerplate generation, generating a boilerplate with the Angular CLI, even though it didn't work, but I'm hoping that in the future versions it will work, and that is a good basis for you to get started with. There were also a lot of online guides and tutorials to get started, and also with the Angular I can use TypeScript instead of normal JavaScript, and I think that all Java developers will approve this. Cons, there were a lot of cons, as you probably noticed. The breaking changes on each Angular version. So I'm waiting for a stable version for myself right now. Also all the bugs with the boilerplate. And then all the additional tools with the Angular are still in alpha phase. So material elements in Angular still in alpha, Angular CLI, the mobile toolkit, both still in alpha. And also that the mobile parameter will be disabled in the next version of CLI, at least temporarily. But then a conclusion, what I learned and what is my advice for you, that if you want to create a progressive web app by using Angular 2, I'm hoping that you will wait for a stable release of Angular 2. Or create them with Polymer. That works fine too. Yeah, I didn't have much time to present the actual application that I created, but you can find it on my GitHub if you want to check it out. Now we have about 5 minutes of discussions. Any questions, comments? Seems silent. Yes, Jouni.
Did you ever try the Lighthouse with the production build?
No, I didn't try it.
So if you would outscore Polymer then? Or?
Maybe. Yeah.
I noticed that the version that CLI created, it had the production mode only for the service workers.
Yeah.
Is that the preferred way of developing?
Yeah, that is because when you are changing some of the UI or something, and then you will hit refresh, but it might be that you won't get the newest version because there is some pre-cached service worker version in there. So for development use, please don't use service workers. All right. Thank you.